Welcome to the Customer Catalyst Conference 2021, to our session, sponsored by Influitive, focusing on customer advocacy, featuring Nicole Dingley, Vice President Marketing and Customer Advocacy, Wiley. Founded in 1807, Wiley is an American multinational publishing company with revenues of around $1.83 billion. Few companies last 50 years, let alone 214. Are there secrets of success to be learned? Nicole lets us into the Wiley Advocacy Garden, how to plant and nurture customer advocates and create genuine, sustainable growth.
So welcome, Nicole. Thank you very much for joining us for the Sea Change on customer advocacy. So just tell us a bit about what people can expect to hear about the Advocacy Garden.
Yes, I'd be glad to tell you that. Today, Daniel, I'm going to tell you about this concept of the Advocacy Garden. And essentially what this is a mutually beneficial space where businesses and their customers grow together. And the goal is for everyone to achieve their desired outcomes through any season, winter, summer, spring, fall. I've worked in a lot of different parts of our business, and I know there's a lot of power in advocacy, but it's also really clear that it takes time and a ton of nurturing to get the end result that you want. But when you do get the end result, you'll see that it has a ton of benefits for the company and for the customer.
Cool. So we're going to hear about nurturing and how you measure it, and also some of the really cool programs and advocacy that you've done across advocacy and community. But first, just tell us a little bit about you and your background. So how did you get into advocacy?
Yeah, so I've been working in advocacy for a while now. I started my career really on the sales side for my company, which is called Wiley, formerly known as John Wiley and Sons. And basically, working in sales led me eventually to an interest in working in marketing. That was what my master's degree was in. Loved marketing, and in particular, I did something called customer marketing. And it was there that I started to build out customer communities and really grow that whole framework. I loved the customer so much that I ended up starting our very first customer success team as customer success became more prevalent and important in our business, especially in light of a digital transformation. And worked that out for a good 3+ years. And while I did that, I also was running advocacy. But it was about a year and a half ago, we decided to really double down on some of the things we were doing with customer advocacy. And I have a separate team now that's just focused on platform marketing, advocacy marketing, and just making sure we're marketing to our customers and nurturing them in really powerful ways.
And you did tell me that you actually had a stint as waitressing, which really sort of taught you that whole ethos of focusing around the customer.
Absolutely. So when I was working on my master's degree, I was working at a high-end steakhouse called Capital Grill. And I still, to this day, take the lessons I learned waiting tables and embracing that Ritz-Carlton concept of ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and just the idea of being able to provide an exceptional customer experience no matter what. And also the idea that when we face problems, whether you're at a restaurant or whether you're at a tech company, it's actually an opportunity to shine and show the difference that your business can make for the customer. And that's what really endears people to you, is who you are, even in their worst moment or your worst moment.
No, absolutely. And I think that's sort of a missed opportunity with a lot of organizations where they don't look actually about finding more out about the customer as an individual, which I know you've got some great examples coming up. But first, tell us a bit more about Wiley before we watch a cool video that says a bit more about them.
Oh, yes. I'd love to talk about Wiley. As I mentioned, I've been with Wiley for 18 and a half years. And I've had so many different roles with this company, but the company goes way beyond 18 years. Wiley was started in 1807. And Daniel, just to put that in perspective, think about it. Napoleon was emperor. George III was king, and Thomas Jefferson was president. So you can imagine the world was quite a bit different then. And in order to weather that change over more than 200 years, a company really needs to know how to adapt. Wiley started off as a publisher in Manhattan. We published the likes of Herman Melville and Edgar Allan Poe, but eventually we moved also into academic publishing, trade publishing. And now, as we've done acquisitions over the years and identified a deeper core identity, we're really all about powering education, shaping workforces, and enabling discovery. We have a research business where we publish society journals and research, important research for everything from COVID research to environmental research. So our journal business is also very strong for us too. And we work in workforces too, enabling people to move easily from the classroom to the workplace, bridging that gap, helping people get their dream jobs and be able to move to different, not only space in their life, but in society. So it's a really exciting business. In particular, I work with higher education instructors. So people teaching college classes globally that, you and I, when we learned, we had a textbook, right? And we did our problems out of the textbook, that we read our textbook. So different now. Now we're in a situation where instructors are assigning digital course materials that include a complete online version of the book, tutorials, animations, automated homework assignment and grading, and even adaptive practice, where the system can tell what Daniel knows versus what Nicole knows, and can feed you questions to help you strengthen your skills in certain areas. So it's my pleasure to work with more than 6,000 instructors across really North America, but globally too, to use this software and to share their successes and help keep growing their students' capabilities, but also their interests and their abilities.
So basically 6,000 customers just for your area. In actual fact, Wiley are the publisher of the Customer Catalyst. So, and I can say that actually they've been amazing in terms of a really different approach to publishing, not just thinking of a physical book, but then looking at how you then extend the book like we're doing now with engaging people that we're trying to reach. So on that note, let's just take a pause and look at the very short video about Wiley, just to give people a flavor of what Wiley is.
When I was young, the world was humongous.
Kids don't see a lot of barriers. They think anything's possible.
It's not scary, you're fearless, you can do anything.
Seeker of knowledge is someone who doesn't stop learning, doesn't stop being curious.
Wiley has continued to reinvent themselves and understand what the needs of education are at that point in time.
We're not just a textbook publisher, we're a provider of online resources as well.
Every day new content is appearing on the Wiley Online Library, and that new content is driving forward the thinking around how to cure cancer, or how to slow Alzheimer's, or how to react to climate change, and how to do a million things that are solving some of the world's biggest problems.
We've also got a big professional development division within Wiley as well, and what that does is it gives people the skills that they need for the rest of their lives. At the end of the day, we're enabling curiosity, and I think that is something really special.
By the very nature of what we do, we are unlocking human potential.
I'm really excited that something that I might be involved with can change the world, even a little bit.
So Nicole, I mean, with lots of industries, there's been massive digital disruption, but even more so in publishing industry, which has, been really under attack. Tell us sort of what it's like today in the Wiley education market.
It has been. There's been so much disruption, but so much opportunity too, right? So about even as recently as 7-8 years ago, our penetration with digital products in our core markets hovered around the 50 to 60% rate. And today, 83% of our customers are using digital products. So we've experienced a lot of disruption in our industry. There are, of course, different competitive things that can happen. We've had some changes in the way higher education academics are structured. There have been the rise of these things called MOOCs, which are massive online courses, open courses. But really, the biggest disruption, I would say, is COVID. COVID really expedited the transformation and exposed a need for instructors to more fully embrace digital courseware. So that's where you're seeing that big jump. When everyone was learning.
Before that, though, it sounded like you'd made a massive leap in terms of the digital education you're providing. So how long, you gave us some really interesting statistics, how long had it taken Wiley Education to get to that digital online learning and making money out of that?
We really started in that game around 2001, 2002 with offering just a simple homework manager. It was only for calculus. And so students could do their math homework and online. You can imagine when you take calculus, there's tons of students in the class. Can you imagine being the instructor to hand grade all those problems? So that's sort of where we started. So from 0 to 83% of the market over time. And we've seen our greatest growth in areas where high stakes assessment is very important, where students need to do things that are mathematically rigorous. But now we're seeing more embrace from different disciplines that perhaps aren't as mathematically rigorous. For example, one of our key disciplines that we see a lot of growth in is anatomy and physiology. So our students that are training to be in allied health professions or even medical professions, they're relying much more on digital course materials to really understand anatomy, to understand how the body works. And you can imagine those animations and tutorials, and there's even like labs that are online where you can dissect online. So to be able to have that experience, especially in COVID, when we were all in our homes and couldn't go into a lab, was really a game changer for us and our students. And I'd mentioned earlier, we work with about 6,000 instructors, but we've had over 1 million unique student users in the last year.
Wow, very impressive. And so is that almost sort of education as a service then that you monetize in terms of a lecturer at a college or a university can then buy that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our purchase model is really similar to a pharmaceutical sale. The instructor is the prescriber, just like a doctor would prescribe you a particular prescription drug. The instructor will prescribe, okay, Daniel, you're taking anatomy and physiology. This is what we're using for this course. And then the student typically is the purchaser. However, there is some, it's different depending on which market we're in. Like in Europe and the Middle East, we tend to see more of an institution saying, we're going to buy this for everyone and include it as part of their course fee.
Cool. Excellent. So learning from that then, excuse the pun, but in terms of COVID expediting the digital disruption, how have you responded then with your online community?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I found in addition to the disruption our instructors were experiencing, we also had some disruption early on, earlier as we were moving through this digital marketplace with our own internal teams. And the thing about moving to digital is that we actually lost quite a bit of revenue as we migrated people to digital. The actual physical textbooks were a lot more expensive. The codes are cheaper, but there's no secondary market. You can't resell them. So what happened was we ended up having to cut back on some of our sales teams. And when that happened, we had to rethink how we were going to engage our customers on a regular basis. So these instructors were used to their sales representatives coming in, chatting with them, taking them to lunch, and then all of a sudden, there weren't nearly as many sales representatives. So we had to think about how we wanted to continue to engage our markets long term. And that's when we really started to explore the idea of customer communities. And we started to go down the path of looking at different vendors, and we settled on Influitive, who is a sponsor of this conference, and had a great relationship with them ever since. We started our customer community in 2016 and really became students of advocacy marketing, my whole team, to figure out what we could do to get the best results for our customers and to engage them in really significant ways. And at this point, we have 4,800 instructors. So more, almost, that's almost, what is that? 3/4, 80% of our customers that are instructors are in our hub.
Which is amazing. But I just wanted to pick up on actually where you talked about cutting sales, and actually your community has become your sales force. Because I think people think, oh, it's a nice fluffy thing to have a community. But in terms of actually hard business metrics, what it sounds like is that's replaced or, extended your sales force in this new digital world where it's actually bringing in revenue. And, there are multiple aims for a community, but, tell us about the aims for the community.
For us, it really started, it's kind of the crawl, walk, run philosophy. For us, it really started as a nurture space where we wanted to nurture these customers who perhaps were no longer seeing someone when for many years they'd been used to seeing someone face to face, and to continue to connect with them, understand their needs, and be responsive. But over time, these communities have become so much more, and have been able to provide us a lot of powerful ways to grow our business beyond simply selling a product. And I can tell you more about that. We use a strategy that I want to get into that Influitive recommends, and it's called the Discover, Nurture, Mobilize strategy. I don't know. Have you worked with this strategy before? Are you familiar with this?
Yes, no, I know of it. But if a lot of people from different areas, like voice of the customer or customer experience, who'll be listening to this, who I know, would. So tell us, explain it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, what happens is you use these 3 elements: discover, nurture, mobilize. Discover is really about finding out who your advocates are. Now, I think people think they know. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. One thing I do know, Daniel, is that we tend to reuse the same people over and over again for the asks, when there are other people out there that are super fans that we're not even tapping into. So, and I think a lot of times people are waiting to be asked, waiting to be included. So I think the goal is to discover not only who your new people are, people that you're not using at all, but then also to discover more about the current advocates that are in place so that you can strengthen those relationships and really find a way to propel them to a new level of commitment with you and your customer.
So can I ask you, in the discover phase, how have you at Wiley discovered, how do you recruit your sort of
great question
community?
A lot of different ways. Okay. So a lot of it comes from sales and customer success. So they will make the introduction to us for these people. Oh, I was just talking to Professor Smith today. He is really interesting. He's really loves this. He has great feedback. He had a great story about this customer. And so then we just start to reach out and start to build the relationship. Other ways we do it. We do conferences and events. So when we're at conferences, we love to meet our customers, include them, do something really cool for them, give them sort of an opportunity to meet us face to face. Campaigns and giveaways are huge for us. So every year during the back to school season, we do this t-shirt giveaway where we will tell our instructors back to school is a really instrumental time for our instructors. They're trying to get this software set up, get it going, without too much trouble, get their students registered and moving so they can get their homework going. So we want to really hype up our product at that point. So we offer instructors the opportunity to claim their back to school t-shirt from us. And we have an annual one, and we give away probably anywhere from 700 to 800 t-shirts just to instructors, not to mention our student advocates as well. So people are pretty pumped to put on our swag. We get them dressed for success. But that's a great way we nurture and discover new people that maybe haven't.
Presumably that you looked at your customer journey with those sort of educators, and you found that is like a key moment in the customer journey.
They love it.
You just leapt upon that, which is great.
And we'll give them a t-shirt, and we'll give them like extra swag and stuff for taking a picture of themselves on campus in that t-shirt. They love it. They totally love it. But another way you do it, that's the positive. Another way you do it is in the negative, which is you look at tech support ticket data. Again, this idea that a problem is a time to shine. We have figured out through voice of the customer research that if a customer contacts tech support more than 3 times within a 1-month period, they are significantly more likely to churn.
Yeah.
We've developed a whole program where we intercede to prevent that and just kind of surround them, a swarm of love, to make sure they're feeling really confident. So we look at that tech support ticket data. And of course, the VOC program too. Our voice of the customer surveys show us who also might be an excellent advocate, but also who might need a little TLC from us too. So those are some of the ways.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good tip, is that you're not looking at advocacy in isolation. You've done a brilliant job of linking to voice of the customer and customer support, where you're getting that data, and that really informs your strategy and your decision making. So tell us about the nurture aspect, because I think perhaps that's blurring slightly with what you were saying about.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a good example of nurture. Like nurture, there's so many different things you can do to nurture your customers. I mean, there's different things that motivate people. Sometimes it's opportunities for recognition and rewards and influence. So maybe you can nurture them by having them, speak on your behalf, although that's also mobilizing them. But a lot of times it's something as simple as providing them with insider tips and tricks from your pros. Sometimes the nurture is networking and collaboration opportunities. And sometimes it's just mechanisms for feedback sharing. So it just sort of depends on what motivates them. That's why you really have to have a robust strategy, because different people respond to different opportunities. Different, for example, Wiley really focuses in on business instructors. We have a really rich accounting list for higher education products, so financial accounting and managerial accounting. I know so much about those instructors. I know what makes them tick. They're really, really into student success. They're into building student skills. They want them to be able to hit the market running and to be able to have professional success, because they have best in class skills, not only in accounting, but to develop professional skills as well. So I know that content like that is going to really propel them. I know they want to talk to each other about it. So I try to create a lot of opportunities for things like that. Let me show you.
Definitely. But that's really interesting. If you go back to the real driver as a teacher, it is about helping others. And that's exactly what you're tapping into, is looking at how they can help their students and leaving a legacy, isn't it? Tell us about Jeannie. Tell us about Jeannie.
I wanted to show you, this is discover and nurture. So this is Jeannie, and you're probably thinking, okay, Jeannie, great. What, big deal, it's a customer. Well, let me just tell you, I know a lot about her. Now, the first thing on the list, the accounting professor. I know that obviously because she's been with us, and that would be in Salesforce. But none of this other stuff would be in Salesforce, right? None of this other stuff is probably in your Gainsight instance. This is all information that I know about Jeannie because we've nurtured her in our studio. So the discover and nurture really go hand in hand. Jeannie,
just tell us about the studio for people who may not.
Oh yeah, so that is our hub. So our influitive instance, we call it the Wiley Plus Studio. We actually have 2 different.
Your community, basically.
Yeah, it's our community. Yeah, so it's our virtual space where our instructors connect with us and each other around all these great ideas, and they engage in discussions. They get product information, and this is our virtual space where we nurture our communities. And from this virtual space, I've learned all this information about Jeannie, right? So she loves true crime. She goes out and power walks almost every day. She and her husband love to travel. Paris is her favorite city. She plays, tennis.
But how did you find this information out from your community?
Because she engages in our discussions with us. So we will post questions like, what was your last great trip? Or when you're not teaching, what do you love to do? She'll connect with us and each other, the other accounting instructors and other instructors that are in our community around these different things. So sometimes we talk about accounting and accounting textbooks and accounting digital course materials. And sometimes we talk about other things. And as Jeannie's gotten closer with us, we know all these things about her. And that way, when we want to thank Jeannie, because I'll tell you what, Jeannie's done quite a few things for us over time.
So let me stop you there. I'm going to ask you that in a minute. But I think the key point that I'm picking up from that is that even though you're selling, what could be is a serious product, you're selling, educational books about accounting, you're not falling into the classic trap of the content and the community has to be dry. She is still a human being, an amazing, interesting human being. And so that interesting question about, what was your last great trip? That tells you volumes about who she is and what drives her.
100%. And so really to get back to this idea of the advocacy garden, when you grow a garden, when you put in minimal effort, you get in minimal results. That's what you're going to get back. It's going to be very status quo, and you don't even know if the plants are going to make it. If you dig deep and you create space for deep roots to form, you're going to be able to get so much more out of that garden. And so that's what we're committed to doing with our advocates, is finding out more about them, giving them an ability to share. Daniel, the world is changing to now where people bring their whole self to work. At least that's the team I try to provide for my people. And that's the space I want to provide for my customers as well. I want them to bring their whole self to this customer experience, and I want them to feel valued when they do so. So that's kind of our approach.
And how long was your community up and running before people like Jeannie were willing to share that level of information? Because you've got to be quite an advocate and engaged to do that.
You do. You have to have a great community manager. You have to have someone who's committed to engaging with these folks every day. I was the community manager at one point. I'm not anymore, but I still love to play with our advocates and talk with them. So it doesn't take as long as you would think to start the flow of information. You have to be courageous. You have to be willing to ask those questions and be willing to connect, and to be really willing also to reward. That's part of the nurture for that connection, for sharing, for contributing.
And so, Ted, I know we're going to come on to one of the amazing things that's, an amazing example that's come out of your community, but what does Jeannie get out of the community that enables her to share? Yeah,
so Jeannie really, what she gets out of it is she loves to be able to connect with other instructors teaching accounting, across North America. She loves the tips and tricks. She loves being able to connect closely to our product teams and to be able to understand what's coming next on the roadmap. What can she anticipate? What can she be excited about? And then what else she gets out of it is we try to provide amazing content for her and events. And we're going to talk a little bit about events strategy in a minute, that better empower her to be her best self. And sometimes, that involves our products, and sometimes it has nothing to do with our products at all. So we try to serve as an expert partner to help her be her the best instructor she can be on her terms. Ideally, I think customers want software to be invisible to them. They just want them to help them be their very best selves, and do their core function. And her core function is to teach the next generation of accountants.
Very good. So I think you're going to share an example about one of the things that you've done.
I am. Yeah, this was a great program. So during COVID, not only were we all tasked with doing work differently, but our instructors that were teaching these courses had a considerable burden on them in a lot of different ways. In addition to having to completely change their teaching style, change their approach, move completely to digital teaching, they also were seeing something that a lot of us weren't. And that was that their students were experiencing significant financial hardship. Think back to the beginning of the pandemic, when so many people had lost jobs. And we had a lot of students coming to their instructors and saying, I can't afford to go to school. I can't afford my bus ticket. I can't afford lunch. My mom lost her job. There's 3 of us living off of my part-time income in our house. Our instructors, because we had this community, when we asked them what sort of things were their biggest problems, at the very top of the list was their students' hardship. So it's sort of shared trauma, really. They wanted.
So in terms of, you actually asked them at the beginning of COVID, what are the biggest things?
Oh yeah.
And then this.
Absolutely. Yes. And they were coming, I mean, because we had these great relationships with them, they were coming to us too and asking, you know, how can you help me? Or is there anything Wiley could do? And so instead of using our money to do campaigns and some other marketing type activities, we took our money and we put it towards creating a grant program. And we put $100,000 towards an emergency persistence grant program where instructors were able to nominate students who they had seen a need. And we chose those students at random to receive these $500 persistence grants to use for whatever they needed. Now, does that have anything to do with Wiley products? No, but we knew it empowered our instructors to feel a little bit better, a little more free about what they wanted to accomplish in their class. They felt like they were able to make a difference that perhaps they weren't able to make before. And we didn't intend for this to necessarily give us marketing benefits, but it certainly did. Not only did it resonate really, really well with customers and prospects because they saw that we cared about the same things they cared about. It also gave our employees a sense of pride. And I think, you know, you feel proud about what you're selling and who you're working for. LinkedIn was completely lit up with our employees' posts about this program, and they were really proud, and it created a really good sense of camaraderie among us. So we were able to help our instructors. We were able to stand by our core beliefs. Wiley talks about standing for the seeker. So this is a great way for us to do that. And because we were able to listen, we were able to take some burden off of our instructors' backs.
Amazing, really amazing.
Yeah.
And so give me another example about how you're using your voice of the customer, you know, to listen, and then how you've then responded to mobilize.
So beyond the financial piece, the other way that we heard instructors mention many other problems, Daniel, that they were having, that things that had not popped up before, completely novel problems for them. And we were listening closely in our Wiley Plus studio, our Influitive instance, hearing these problems. And we came up with the idea that we would, we needed to help them get answers to these problems. So we compiled them and we developed a program, a series of events that we call our Wicked events. And our Wicked events are focused on what are deemed wicked problems. And a wicked problem, it's actually a technical term. It sounds really cool, but it's a problem that requires an interdisciplinary approach to solve. The parameters of the solution are always changing. There's no right or wrong answer to these types of problems. They're either directionally good or directionally poor. So there's a few other criteria that define wicked problems. So we developed an event, a virtual event that exclusively focused on the wicked problems instructors were facing. Things like academic integrity. You can imagine there was a giant spike in cheating because of the move to online. Things like room fatigue, and even going down the path of mental health and mental health challenges among students, and reentry burn with faculty and students alike. I have a little video if you want to see a little bit more about it.
Let's take a look at the video.
Okay.
So, Nicole, you've talked about the Discover, Nurture, Mobilize framework. So tell us about the third element of mobilizing your advocates. How do you do that to get the rewards for them?
Right, so great. Yeah, no, I mean, here's the thing. If you've properly tended to that garden and you've built those relationships, the harvest does look like this. Like you really can come in and make legitimate asks. Now, everyone knows when you're working in technology, nothing is ever perfect. There's always going to be problems, you are always going to have to continue to nurture. There's always going to be changes or upgrades. But in general, there are so many ways that you can leverage advocates to propel your business to a new level. The first three on this list are what, everyone always calls the 3 R's: reviews, references, and referrals. So simply creating a review program is something that you can do today. Like, you could leave today and drive reviews if you've tended to that garden. If you've created an environment where people trust you, they like you, and they want to sing your praises. So we've definitely leveraged reviews out of our Influitive Hub. We've asked people to share their stories. We've had people that we haven't even asked or given any sort of big record reviews on sites like G2 Crowd or Trust Radius to share their experiences with our product. So reviews are huge. References, we maintain a reference letter library, but we also have a full cadre of people willing to provide references for us at any point for a range of different products. And of course, everyone loves referrals. So it's something that we are all constantly trying to cultivate, but using a hub or an Influitive instance or wherever you want to do, you can always reward customers who provide referrals for you, which is a great idea. And it's easy to do if you have advocates that love you. For us too, a couple of special things that we've done, and this is where you start moving down a little bit further down the maturity cycle with advocacy. We've created what we call our PAC. It's a product advisory community. So we've recruited people who say, oh gosh, Nicole, I'd love to give you feedback on your product. I'd love to work with you to keep getting the product better and better. So we have more than 400 instructors who serve on this PAC for us, who do a range of things, everything from wireframe testing to focus groups to surveys that help us keep getting our products better and better. So I highly recommend using your advocates, not just to help you sell, but to help you keep that garden nurtured, to keep it fruitful. I mean, you need that feedback to keep improving your product.
But so you talk about those 400 people. So how did you come up with that sample of your customers who would be on the community on that product advisory council? Is it by region? It's
listening. It's listening to who's talking, who has great ideas, who has feedback. That they find that being able to provide that feedback is a form of nurture for them, because it gives them voice and choice in your product. So we always have our customer success managers, our sales professionals on the lookout for people who have strong opinions, have interest in that, have the experience that they want to share that with the company. So that's how we sort of look for people that sort of raise their hand to want to advise on the product.
And do you map those to your business plan? So say, for example, you're looking at getting most growth from like the accounting, education versus history, for example. Do you sort of roughly map the number?
Yeah, no, that's a great, that I would say that our breakdown is typically, it is proportionate to the markets that we play in. Yeah. For the most part, it's not perfect, but that's another thing that you can do that's really powerful, is to use your advocacy communities to create advisory boards. So to develop these, like just for accounting, an advisory board for the accounting instructors, versus their interests are quite different than instructors that are teaching anatomy and physiology or physics. So those advisory boards for like STEM versus business instructors, you can use your advocacy community to recruit and pull for that. Those who are like an elite set of 10 that really represent some key interests of things you're trying to understand more deeply.
Yeah, great.
Mm-hmm. So, and lots of other things on there too, testimonials, social media sharing. These are all things that we do. Like another thing we've done is we have peer advisors who are essentially kind of like that we use them to help us sell. These are like sort of frontline people who they both consult their customers who are consulting with future customers on the products that they're considering. So we will align an accounting instructor at one's college with another accounting instructor using the product that they're interested in, and give them the opportunity to answer questions, but also to answer questions beyond our product about how they're teaching online, or how they're teaching in a hybrid environment, or how they're managing, testing capabilities for students who are remote. So just really having an advisor to help them get, to share best practices and upskill in the realm of digital education.
And so they're volunteering on the community to do that, are they, or how they?
Yeah, I pay them. I will pay them a sort of a honorarium for doing so, for their time. But yes, they've said, yes, I'm interested in doing this. I really love the product, and I'd be happy to help the next batch of people get into the product as well and get the most out of it.
Amazing. So tell us, is there anything else on Mobilize before we talk about the sea change takeaways that you want to leave people with today?
No, I think these are the main things. I mean, social media is huge, and it's so important that your advocates share what's going on, what's important to them. We had a great response when we did the events I just mentioned, whether it was Stay the Course grants or the Wicked with Wiley events. Our advocates shared like crazy. So it really helped us grow our following. And perhaps that's why, like, our Wicked with Wiley events, we intended it to be a customer nurture event, but more than 40% of our attendees ended up being prospects because they had seen posts on social media and they had a lot of interest in attending as well. So it really grew, and it proved to us that we were listening closely and identifying the right pain points for our markets.
Amazing. Okay. So in concluding then, sort of two key questions is, how did you get buy-in from sort of your senior leadership to do the program, the customer advocacy and program, and your community, the Wiley Studio?
You do have to be willing. You do have to measure. Advocacy. Yes, it is. It looks like it's the softer side of success, but it's not. It is a science, and it can be measured. So there are ROI calculators on things like testimonials, blog posts, reference letters. You can use ROI calculators in that. But I think a lot of what really proves to senior management involves retention and measuring that churn number for people who are involved in your advocacy communities, and sentiment. I think understanding more deeply the variance in the NPS and OSAT scores for people who are involved in your customer communities or serve as customer advocates versus those who don't. It's very significant. And every time we measure our OSAT and NPS, there's always a big gap between those who participate in our success programs and our advocacy programs and those who don't, those who are part of our customer communities. They don't even have to be a true advocate. They don't have to necessarily be mobilized, but if they've participated in the customer community, they're much more likely to stick with Wiley, not churn out, and to give us a higher OSAT score.
And especially when you talk about, the community being your sales extension, where you've had to cut salespeople, it's very evident there is a hard commercial gain for the organization from building a community and, avoiding churn. So no, amazing. Yeah.
And Daniel, the other thing is too, is like, again, like when I've talked about how we're further along in the advocacy maturity curves to where we can use our community for things like the product advisory community. Really have to help your senior management understand the possibilities of having a community like that. So when you can create a better product because you have customers at the ready to do that, if you can message test quickly because you have customers that are right there to do it, if you can identify people to speak at a conference quickly, it really streamlines so many different things. And it can help your senior leadership team achieve the goals that they've set for themselves. So I would highly recommend, if understanding their goals, taking a consultative approach to understanding leadership's goals, and then thinking deeply on how you could use customers that are happy to help them achieve those goals.
Absolutely. So sum up for us on the story with your sea change takeaways. What should people?
Yeah, this is like sort of my final garden slide. Thank you for letting me use that metaphor to death. It really starts with being patient. There is a concept in gardening with perennials that it really takes 3 years for things to grow with a true perennial. And the theory is this sleep, creep, leap. So you have to be patient with it. It takes time to build these relationships, as we all know through research on trust. Trust takes time to build, and you have to bear it out. So be patient. Second, if I only had one thing to advise, it is listen closely. Take the time to listen. Don't just listen about your product. Listen about a lot of things. Give for your customers the chance to be real with you and to talk to you about the things that matter to them. Because when you can understand those ancillary matters, you're going to better understand how your product fits into the constellation of what they do. This next one is responding with integrity. So I like to say you have to earn the ask, right? So understanding where you should play and where you shouldn't play, and understanding that it is okay if everything that you provide for your customers and advocates isn't centered on your product. You kind of have to open up your grip a little bit and be willing to understand that and respond in a way that reflects their needs, not just your business interests. That I feel like that grant program really showed that, and it paid off. It paid off. And then finally, harvest with confidence. And when I say that, I mean, if you've done these things properly, it is okay to ask. It is okay to ask someone to host a webinar. It is okay to ask them for their testimonial. They should want to do this if you've created a gold star experience for them. So don't be afraid to ask. People are often just waiting for you to ask. That peer advisor program I mentioned that we started, we have 60 peer advisors, 60 people that have PhDs across this country willing to meet with other instructors just for a stipend. I mean, it's nothing significant. And they do that because they do appreciate what we do for them as a company. And they do want to contribute to our success because we're contributing to their success. So think about it that way. You should be able to harvest with confidence if you do everything right.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Nicole. You are an amazing advocate for advocacy. And it's a really amazing story with some really tangible things I think people listening in today will be able to go and act upon. And I think also it's a great example of it's not just advocacy in a bubble. You've really looked at how you bring in voice of the customer as a sea change, as well as customer success. And ultimately, you're then creating advocates who you can then harvest in the garden with confidence and can co-create with you. And that is a real testament to the advocacy you've created. So Nicole Dingley, thank you very much for sharing your sea change in customer advocacy.
My pleasure. Thanks, Daniel.